It's the One Podcast.
I closed Hitachi this morning, Fortune 50 company. I hit the milestones and blew right past them. We have a private chef, took them from it's like 600K ARR to 600K MRR. My executive assistant makes $95,000 a year.
This guy's good. This guy's gonna make me part with all my. We got another episode of the One Podcast here with Joey from Apex. He's a guy that I've been following for a while, super active in the sales and kind of the outbound community. Joey, we have done a lot of interviews lately with a lot of sales and kind of outbound SaaS guys, some agency guys as well. But I think kind of what you're doing is like a different angle than I've seen like most companies, which is pretty interesting to me. Obviously, our audience is kind of early stage entrepreneurs, people starting different types of businesses, agencies being one of them. A lot of them are salespeople. Do you want to kind of give a little background to you, what you're all about,
Cool.
and Apex before we get into it?
Yeah, man. So I am a career sales guy, if you will. Started my career in the Fortune world. So I was actually in sales pretty quickly.
Nice.
Had success there. Got into more of a leadership role within the first 12 months of my journey at that particular company. Realized how much I hated the corporate world. And so despite the success, I did. Now, for the record, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but I got my ass handed to me. Got my ass handed to me. Well, once I became a leader, so like becoming a leader at 24 years old of a 115 person sales team, I was not ready for that. I was not prepared for that. I probably wasn't qualified for that either. And I think this is what a lot of organizations do. They make the mistake of just because someone's really good at sales does not mean they're going to be a great leader out the gate. So just because it's your best salesperson doesn't mean they're going to be your best, manager leader. I'm a great leader by nature, so people follow me, but I'm not a good manager of people. So there's a difference between management, leadership, and training. Nonetheless, so I started my career there, had some success, decided I don't like the corporate enterprise Fortune world. I don't want to wear a suit and tie, although you're wearing a very nice jacket today. You look great. But ended up getting poached to be the VP of sales of a commercial risk management firm. And so took that role, built the outbound department from scratch, had a lot of success there. Was there for about 18 months. And I got poached again to be the VP of sales of a digital marketing agency. And same story, basically built the outbound from scratch, took them from it's like 600K ARR to 600K MRR. So we 10x their revenue, a little bit more than 10x their revenue in about 18 months. And then from there, decided I was supposed to be on an equity track and have ownership in the company. If I hit milestones, I hit the milestones and blew right past them. And then he's like, just keep doing what you're doing. We'll see how it goes. And so I kind of realized pretty quick I was not going to be on an ownership track. And, arrogant, young, scrappy me was like, well, cool, then I'll just go build my own thing. If I'm going to keep making all you guys a bunch of money, I might as well go own the thing I make a bunch of money for. Now I was naive in the sense of thinking that just running a business was going to be easy. Right. So I ended up leaving that business, starting my first company, which is a company called Tribe.
What year is this, Joey? This
was end of 2017. So I've been an entrepreneur now for 18, 19, 20. So yeah, about six or 7 years. My first company, Tribe, was an outsourced sales development firm. You see a lot of those today. And we were a little bit early on that scene. And so we were outsourced SDR going for companies who were selling 6 and 7 figure contracts. And, it's funny, man. I started off, my first ever customer, I charged them $500 a month to be their outsourced sales team. And then that grew to $1,500. And then I couldn't stop selling. So then it grew to $2,500 a month. Then it grew to $6,000 a month. Then it grew to $12,000 a month. And the next thing you know, I've got 5-figure a month retainers with a bunch of clients. We ended up carving out a niche in account-based sales, so more one-to-one personalized sales outreach. Ended up getting acquired early 2020. And then
that's Tribe got acquired.
that was Tribe. Tribe got acquired by a account-based marketing platform.
Okay.
And then the acquisition didn't go well. So though we got acquired.
Post-acquisition, it didn't go well.
Correct. Yeah. So, what people don't tell you in the mergers and acquisitions world is
they care what happens afterwards.
You don't get all your cash up front, right? So you might you might sell for millions, but only see half of that up front. And then, they dangle the carrot for the next 50%. And then it's really set up for failure in a lot of ways. And
I heard that.
I learned a lot in that. I got paid and, all that, but I didn't see half of my money. Got released within 4 or 5 months because they decided to go a different direction with where they wanted to take that company. And so it was a blessing in disguise for me because it released me from all my contracts, released me from my non-competes, et cetera. And so I was able to start the next thing, which is what is now Apex 3.5 years later.
So Joey, to kind of interject there before we get into Apex, I want to kind of run through a couple of things back in that sort of trajectory.
Yeah, please do.
For context, I've never had a job, so I didn't go into the corporate world or anything. I always hated the corporate world, but so I can identify with that. I sold an ed tech company when I was in school. Then when I got out, I think I'm maybe a few years behind you. I started a full stack marketing agency, where we're doing like maybe 50, awesome. 60K months. Nothing super crazy.
Sure.
But, and there's something I want to get into on top of that, but I guess, you were always sort of this kind of like aggressive sales guy or just like headstrong guy, but you never thought to start a business in the first place? It's a question that we ask.
Yeah. I guess. It's interesting, man.
Because you seem like the natural born entrepreneur. Yeah. You seem like
you would think that.
Seem like that. Yeah.
In hindsight, I have always probably had this. I've had an interesting journey. So actually, very competitive, but I get my sales background from my dad. So my dad is still in sales today. He refuses to retire. He is a director of national sales of Home Depot.
Wow.
And so he has always been there. I watched him climb the ranks from making $6 an hour all the way up Home Depot's ladder to where he is today and does fairly well for himself. We were poor growing up, so I didn't really see entrepreneurs, right? I didn't know what an entrepreneur really was. My dad is fairly risk averse, and in the sense that he takes risks within the job, but he's not a risk taker outside of that.
Got it.
Very conservative, 401k guy, like just living his best life that way. But he really pushed me in sports. Like he's one of those super dads that was at every practice and every game. He was very hard on me to perform. He was very much wanted me to be excellent because I was gifted. And so that carried through. I ended up playing Division I football and had offers to play Division I baseball at the same time. And so I had that competitive nature to build and create and succeed and see victory. But it didn't necessarily rear its head in the sense of I left out a portion of my story where I actually went into full-time nonprofit world in the full-time Christian ministry. And it's actually how I broke into sales was because I was raising full-time support. So I was basically raising funds from high net worth individuals to invest in the nonprofit. And through that, I networked, and he, a guy that I networked with that invested in us said, "Hey, if you ever leave this, I've got some stuff for you. If you want some opportunities and at bats, I can get you climbing the ladder a little faster." So I took that opportunity. But I never really had an entrepreneurial bug that I know of. At least that's not where I put it.
Yeah.
I was very focused on, I've always been a leader. I've always been someone who, like, it doesn't matter the room. I tend to command the room. It's something that, as weird as it might sound, I have declarations that I say every morning. People talk about like affirmations.
Yeah.
Right. That they have their affirmations in the morning where they tell themselves who they think they are. I think it's a little bit like frou-frou, woo-woo. But there's still something to like training your brain to believe in who you truly are. And so one of mine is
100%
that my presence commands any room that I walk into.
Yeah.
And so, entrepreneurial, it didn't really show up until I got into the small business world, right? I went corporate, went enterprise, thought I was just going to climb the sales ladder and make a bunch of money in sales and had success. But then I realized I don't like the boundaries. I want to build, I want to create, I want to solve problems very quickly. I want to innovate. And so when I got down to the small business world, a risk management firm and in the marketing agency, I realized like these guys running the companies, like they're no better,
than you.
smarter, et cetera. They're just taking more risk, and with risk comes reward. And so that's when it kind of was like the light bulb went off about 2015 for me. I started listening to, this is when Gary Vaynerchuk started, he started doing his daily vlog back in the day. I just started, I was doing a bunch of direct sales. So I was driving around, taking reps on calls, talking to big manufacturing companies, et cetera.
Yeah.
And on those drives, I would listen to podcasts of entrepreneurs, and I was like, huh, they're not that special. They're just very driven, and they're not risk averse. They in fact lean into risk, and I'm a pretty risky person. I'd be willing to take those risks. So I thought, well, let's take the risk. And so that's kind of what got me there. Was go ahead.
It's interesting you bring up that pathway, because I just interviewed Byron. I don't know if you know Byron from Apollo, who was under Kevin Dorsey at Snack Nation, who's sort of traditional kind of.
I know Katie and I are super good friends, but I don't think I know Byron.
And then Luis from Mailshake, another kind of sales development type tool.
Okay, cool.
And they kind of communicated the same thing, which was just like it's sort of like sales gives you kind of the confidence. It sort of opens up the idea, because it's naturally,
it does,
makes you good at entrepreneurship. But some people go into that corporate sales pathway, and then they never sort of, takes them a while to get that realization that, oh, it's just the risk that's added to the, and then you have to get comfortable with the risk. But a lot of people have
risk is interesting. You know, I think a lot of people listen to this who are striving to be an entrepreneur, thinking about it, right? Like there's risk inherently in everything. There's a risk in putting your future in some other company's hands, right? Like look at the layoffs that are happening right now. It's like there's no more risk, and the outcomes are not in your control in a lot of cases. Whereas it's like I want to be in full control of my future, and so therefore I'm going to take the risk. I think we've been sold this bag of goods of like, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get good grades, you get a degree, you go into the corporate world, you climb the ladder, you get a pension, you get a 401k and all those things. And it's like, there's still risk in that, even that. It's like, but I don't get a 401k as an entrepreneur. It's like, but like the 401k, you're still dependent on the market, which you have no control over. And so even your retirement is not necessarily guaranteed, as much as people think it is. And so there's risk no matter where you're at.
Well, I think there's a balanced level of it too. Like if you think about, like a lot of people I interview are people who did careers for 20 years before they started their business. They had savings, they had all their ducks in the line, and they're very successful. I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, where $200,000 comes in, and I'm trying to figure out how I can spend that to kind of move things along with the business or my life or whatever. So I think there's a balanced level that you kind of have to work out for yourself in terms of that risk, because a lot of people aren't, they're never going to forgive themselves if they lose money, right?
Well, and just like anything, you go to the gym, like I've worked out my whole life, and it's like you develop muscle memory, and it's like
you can come back.
You can come back. You can also like.
I'm a big lifting guy too, so.
Are you? Yeah, I could tell, man. You're beefy. I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. Former football player, so I've had to throw around some weight in my days. But no, man, it's risk is a muscle memory, right? Like I think that you get better at taking risk, you get more precise. And the way I look at it is like speed is also huge. Like my father-in-law, phenomenal human being, very calculated, engineer type person, was a government employee for his whole career and ended up retiring. And he looks at the way I make decisions, and it's baffling to him because he's like, dude, you just move so fast and you're very decisive. And he's the opposite, right? He looks at it from every angle. He takes forever to make a decision. And my whole thing is like, man, you get to the Hall of Fame batting 300. Right?
My old
baseball analogy.
So, I do want to get into the sales development and Apex and like different, because there are people in our community who are trying to develop agencies and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I wanted to throw something by you real quick. So I was doing I never did like it. I've always done like cold calls and, whatever to get clients, right? So I'm like very familiar with that. I sort of pivoted that agency into doing lead gen, just like automated email outreach, Zoom info, all that kind of crap. And that's sort of where it really took off. And I was able to sort of stack the margins versus like the SEO, other sort of margins weren't very good. Then you got in touch with me in like tell me if you can see this on my screen. You got in touch with me about 2021. I think this is when was this when you were doing Apex or at that point, or?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Damn.
And I saw this and I'm sending I'm working 20 hours a day, sending tons of emails, blah, 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 blah. So I saw this email and I'm freaking out. I'm like, this guy's fucking good.
Oh yeah, brother.
I'm like, this guy's going to make me part with all my money. Like I knew it immediately. And then like, even when you sent like this other follow-up to like my CEO, and I was like, oh dude, I've never seen anybody do something like this. And it also gave me like massive FOMO, because I was like, yeah, I could do the freaking like the lead gen is one thing, but like helping them close and like developing the sales roadmap afterwards, like that has a lot more value, and you can also the payoff is going to be larger, because now you're tying your coaching and all that type of stuff to their end goal revenue. Then that makes for a better case study than like, hey, I got them 20 leads, you don't know if they close or not.
That's right.
But I saw that and I was like, yeah, this guy, he's got to figure it out. So, and then, following up, I see you now, you've got this team, like you guys look like the Navy SEALs, like you've got like this killer. I was trying to do that with my agency. Then I ended up like, just get like a bunch of guys, like we're lifting and we're closing deals, like a freaking boiler room type Vin Diesel environment. That was like my goal, trying to get God into it, like the Christian side of it as well.
Yeah.
But then I ended up moving the company to Miami, hiring a bunch of, assistants, females, etc.
Yeah.
My sales culture kind of disappeared and became more of like a party culture.
Okay.
So
I get it.
How did you have that kind of like, obviously you're very good at sales and you can command a room and all of that. And no doubt in my mind, whatever you're doing, whatever the organization is, you can help them close, get more leads, close deals, outbound, etc. How do you then transition that into building a business and getting people under you that are of the same ilk?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have this thing that we call being, right? So being can somewhat be synonymous with, although it's not interchangeable, but close to it if people understand identity. With identity, right? So it's like, who are you at your core, right? And so we have very, very solid, clear statements around who we are. We say who you be. And so for us, we have very clear core values and virtues that we live by. And we don't just say them. They're not just some cute thing we review once a year. We review them every single week. We do call outs of people who are living them out. We read through them every single week. And so that's part of it. The second is, one of my declarations is I attract, I don't chase. Right. And so for me, I don't chase employees.
Got it.
If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. And so I think that there is an attraction to conviction. So two parts. I think that conviction creates attraction and it also repels. So I want to be authentically. It does. Yeah. I want to be authentic.
Good. Yeah.
I'm an authentic individual. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to live what I believe, live out my being. And so because of that, I think that the people who are like-minded to that are attracted to it, right? It's kind of like the mosquitoes to the light kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't waver on that. Culture is the most important thing we have, in my opinion. And so, yeah, own your shit is probably one of our biggest core values. So extreme ownership, plan and play to win, right? So what does that mean to plan out your days, your weeks, your months, your quarters, your years? What does it look to play with that plan in mind to win? Is another big core value of ours. Be the shoulders is another one. So how do you be the shoulders that people lean on and stand on? Is another huge core value of ours, and we got a few others, but we have these very clear things. And I think that because I live those things, I don't just talk about them, I walk the walk. People are attracted to that. And when they're attracted to that, they want to be a part of that. And people are willing to sacrifice to be a part of the culture. I mean, I have some of the most savage human beings on earth on my team that could probably make more safe money right? They can make more money here, but they can make safer, more guaranteed money elsewhere. But they're willing to take a sacrifice to come be a part of the culture because they feel like they will become a better human, a better everything by being under this.
Yeah. See, I totally get that, and having the boundaries and not like working too hard to try to convince people to join, right? Like, and you sort of stack it up over time. Were all those guys like, were they all local to you? You know what I'm saying? Like or they all relocated?
A lot have relocated. We've also started hiring a lot more local. But I would say that the big core team is all over the country. So Utah, Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, Canada. We got people all over, but at the end of the day, he is going to be attracted to our culture, and then my goal is to make it compelling enough to want to move here.
Got it. Okay. Because that sort of makes sense to me, and I remember reading a post from me like a month ago or something like that about the SDR, whoever got fired at Cloudflare. And I was watching that video and I was thinking the same thing, which is like, if you have 3 months, if you're not hitting the goals and like closing deals, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't, like, why do you deserve to be there? So how do you, which is an unpopular opinion that I know, I'm sure you've like kind of expressed for a while, but like I had issue, I fired like 30 people over the course of like 2 years, just because I kept hiring people and like I had this sort of Wolf of Wall Street, like, oh, believe in you, blah, blah, blah. Did I really believe in them? I think so. But I was like trying to create that culture rather than like trying to find the values that align. Have you ever been in that? Have you always had that sort of success with the hiring, getting people who really align? Or so how has that worked out for you?
Not always. That's why I bring up core values, right? Because it's not always been important to me. It's been important to me personally, but there was a disconnect between my personal core values and convictions and my company's identity. And so I thought it was more about like, just go do the work, right? Like, do the work, do excellent work,
right.
Live a moral, ethical life, have integrity, etc. Until I realized, like, no, like if I want to have a great friend group, I'm going to want that friend group to resemble my core values. Great. Well, then my company, I spend 8 hours, 10 hours a day with these people. Like, I want them to reflect that as well. And then the funny thing is I think the other mistake I had was that if someone doesn't share the same convictions as me, that's okay. They can still do the job. Or the inverse. I think that if people are too much like me, then we're not going to be able to cover some of the other roles in the company that maybe I couldn't do. Yeah. It's like, well, you have to differentiate core values and skill set and personality, right? Like, you can have someone who's more analytically minded, operational minded, that has these same core values as you, and they're going to be able to fill that void that you couldn't before. And so I was more or less hiring for the skill set before, as opposed to hiring for the person first and then the skill set. So no, to your question, there's a long-winded answer of saying no, it has not always been this way, and I paid for it.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah. So what another thing? Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from it is I sort of got, and this maybe has just been like I didn't have that corporate experience, so I just wasn't thinking the same way about people. People have backgrounds in their life, they have parents, they have different values and stuff. So I thought people could change. I sort of had like a different idea. The other thing I've noticed though is that there's these companies that train SDRs and sales reps, right? Like, and then for you to hire them, like as an agency or whatever. And they're always like pushing like what's in your stack, okay? Like the intent data, which we know is bogus, right?
Totally.
All the different AI automation, AI this. In my opinion, you really should, regardless of the product, a good sales rep should be able to like just start calling, text, and email and whatever. You need no software. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and they should be able to start closing. Like,
I don't even talk about technology.
I really feel like all this is an excuse. You know what I'm saying? So
that's why I purposely don't. I purposely don't even talk about technology. I mean, obviously we use technology, we leverage it at times, but I think that we've gotten in such a place, we call it the sales acceleration industrial complex, right? Of like this world where we believe that the technology is solving the problem, whereas no, the problems really boil down to 4 things. It's Do you have the right list? AKA, is your targeting very dialed in? Do you have the right messaging? Meaning, what is it that you say that is compelling, that is a value prop, that is a compelling ask? Do you have the right reps? Are they trained to take that message to those target accounts and people on the list? And then do you have aggressive follow-up when you find a thread you can pull on? Like, that's all it takes to be good at sales and good at outbound. And yet we want to throw intent data at the problem. We want to throw whatever. And so we get bogged down with these expensive licenses and users, and it requires a bunch of different seats. We make sales reps dependent on these tools instead of teaching them list, message, rep, follow-up, list, message, rep, follow-up.
Yeah.
And so we always talk about it comes down to doing the fundamentals at scale consistently over time.
Yeah.
Right.
But
what are the fundamentals?
Keep going, sorry.
Go ahead. I was saying, what are the fundamentals? It's the four pillars. I think there's a lag here, so we talk over a little bit. But what are the fundamentals? Those 4 pillars I mentioned. What does it mean to do them at scale? That's when you can introduce technology, but you have to get the fundamentals right before you introduce technology to scale it. And then consistently, we have to then do the fundamentals at scale consistently, meaning stopping and starting, thinking a campaign's not working, etc. Right? Because every time you stop and you restart, you are hitting reset on everything. And then over time, have a long time horizon. Outbound is not going to just turn on overnight and be your most profitable channel. You have to commit to it over a long 18, 24, 36-month period. And if you do those things, it will absolutely be your most powerful channel. But people don't allow it. They don't do the fundamentals. They try to just scale shit. Scaling shit is just more shit.
Scale is a buzzword also,
Total buzzword.
Yeah. The other thing, so I guess, do you feel like, I almost feel like sales is a sport and you have to get the reps in to get good at it. And if you're doing tons of sequences and stack, like you don't get you have to look at a prospect, get hungry, start getting thirsty, like start drooling at the mouth, thinking about what am I going to do to close this guy? And if you're not even, like when you're prospecting and using these tools, you're not thinking, you're not prepping your mind and getting that reps and those calluses.
That's a good point.
That you need to get.
We have taken thinking out of the sales reps role. We've replaced it with automation, AI, these sequencing tools. Data is now a commodity, so we don't take list building as seriously. We just go into Zoom Info, Apollo, etc. We put our criteria and we rip down a list, and then we just start calling, emailing, etc. We drop it into our sequence tool. We automate all of our emails. We get terrible open rates, terrible response rates. We cold call. We're talking to 2% of the people. We have a 2% connect rate. We're on LinkedIn, social selling, and people hate that. And you're using an automation tool to spam that. And once you get a lead, we still do it, right? We still try to automate the follow-up. What's funny is 80% of deals take 5 or more follow-ups on an opportunity to get through closed one. 71% of reps are making 1 or fewer follow-ups. So if it takes 5 or more, 80% of all deals takes 5 or more follow-ups, and 71% of reps are making 1 or fewer follow-ups.
Yeah.
The math ain't mathin'. You're not going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, it's also just like, I feel like, I don't know, it seems like such a personal thing because I can't tell you how many people who, no matter what you do, they won't do what it takes for sales. You know what I'm saying? And it sounds like we're like a boiler room and just like forcing people to do things, but it really is true. Like I've had 5 guys who are hired, I put in a room and they try to get like booze in there and stuff to like start pumping them up, like maybe strippers or whatever. And once the good comes out there, it's like the stage is like 4 or 5 before they start slowing down. Yes, all that.
I'm the CEO. I have 110 employees. I have so many responsibilities: legal, accounting, finance, operations, people, hiring. I don't have much time, but yesterday I got on the phone with my team, just like that. And in 2 hours, I made $40. There's no reason a rep shouldn't be making 100+ dials a day. There's just zero reason. And that's not tech-enabled. I'm not making parallel dials. I'm just ripping through 40 dials a day of aggregated leads we have. That's all we do. Fundamentals of scale. So
now, just to play devil's advocate there, I've also had, I've done, right? You call the people up and then they go, oh, but you got lucky. where they go, oh, but you're like different. Well, not everybody's like me. Like I have one situation where all the employees, I did that experiment. Like nobody's calling, I go and bang out 100 of them. And they're like, oh well, you're like special. It's like we can't do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Have you ever heard that type of?
We both have the same amount of time in the day. In fact, I have less. Yeah. With my obligations, and so no, I just have a desire to win, and you don't. And so now I don't have that problem on my team. I mean, my team makes $160, $200 a day per person, and they love it. They eat it up. I'm in there yesterday. I log in to it's probably like 10:30. I log in, and a guy's already made $130 that day.
Nice.
So it's just like that's just how we operate. But most people make excuses. Most people don't truly want to win. They join sales. It's just the same for entrepreneurship. They become an entrepreneur, they become a sales rep because they hear about the money you can make. What they don't take into account is the money that you can make is on the other side of working your ass off.
Yeah.
And so I had the same amount of time. I made 40 dials in 2 hours. You have 2 hours. Why didn't you make 40 dials? Right. I'm not special. I clicked the button 40 times. That's all I did. You know?
Now, okay, so expanding this a little bit, but my younger brother, by the way, is like on a typical sales track. He worked at Brex, Unicorn, SDR, AE, and he tells me all the time about how not only does their lead gen suck and they fire like the entire sales department every other month, but like they never improve. And like he's gone to a number of these companies where they're like venture backed and they have big sales departments, and the output is always like super terrible. I know like your content is very like targeted at that kind of like need. Have you worked with any like really big companies where like people would be surprised how bad it is?
I closed Hitachi this morning, Fortune 50 company. And news alert, I looked it up. It took me 42 follow-ups. Most people give up after one.
Yeah.
I followed up 42 times to finally get the deal across the table. And so, we work with a bunch of companies. We have Hitachi, Sony, Talkdesk, a lot of these large enterprise companies. You'd be surprised. They're massive organizations that struggle with inside sales or SDRs or whatever it might be. And some of it's economic headwinds. Some of it's the landscape of outbound right now with phone deliverability is down, email deliverability is down. And so they're kind of running around with their head cut off because they're having a hard time with profitability. And you'd be shocked, man. You get into some of these big companies and they don't know their numbers. I ask them, hey, what's your current connect rate? What's your completion rate? How many leads do you generate off of that? What's your meeting show rate? What's your sales accepted rate? What's your win rate? And they're just looking at me with a deer in headlights. Like, how do you not know your numbers? You're a massive multi-billion dollar Fortune 50 company. Which creates a lot of opportunity for me.
That's what I'm saying. As a service, selling to them and then getting involved with them, like how do you even deal with that given that, it's like. There must be so much, just like things to, like annoying things to deal with in like the corporate infrastructure. Like,
it's terrible.
Like that. You know what I'm saying? When they have like thousands of
I mean, the way that we do it, just like practically or tactically, is we come in, we do a pilot, we make it a low lift. I know that most enterprises will spend less than, if it's $9,999 or less, they don't have to go through a big procurement process. And so we come in, we create a 1 to 6 week sprint project for $1,000, $3,000, $6,000, come in, prove our worth. And then we just look at the numbers and say, hey, here's your numbers. This is what came off the back of the pilot. You guys told me that you want to grow by X tens of millions this year. Right now, you're on track to grow by 30% of that. And so either you need to keep doing what you're doing and add about, call it 60% more headcount, or go our route, enable your team better, supplement your team, and we can get to that same outcome with, a quarter of the spend that you would need to spend. And so it really does that. But then once you actually get just getting a yes from them is the tip of the iceberg. Then you go through You got to work with their info security team. And then, if you handle any of their data, then you got to deal with procurement team. What's your net payments? They want to pay you net 90 terms, which means that you do work for 90 days without getting paid, and they finally will pay you.
Yeah.
And so then you go into negotiation. Then you go into legal redlining. So then they look at all your contracts, and they want to take your 4-page contract and make it 19 pages. And it's a battle, dude. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
I've actually stopped wanting to work with them, but I enjoy having the logos because it makes sales easier for everything else.
Yeah, that's the worst. Yeah, I've done some of those net 90s, but I guess it's just like
it's awful.
If you're gonna get a bigger contract, I think it's kind of worth it. But so I guess just like kind of closing things together. Yeah, so you're sort of like a later stage agency. Now, how many employees do you have? How big is the company?
110.
So how is that? How is like your day-to-day different now? Like like how do you manage your time? Because obviously you got to do the content, you got to do that type of stuff. How do you manage all the? Do you just have really good people below you?
I have great people. I have a great COO, Justin Middleton. We acquired a company which had a lot of great assets and good team that was really culturally aligned with ours. And that was a pretty seamless merger there, or acquisition. Yeah, man, I think that for me, my day is far more up in the clouds to some degree, in the sense that when I do meetings with my team internally, it's either with the team collectively, the leadership team, or it's individually with leaders. And I trust them to lead their team, and I'm just helping facilitate their leadership. So that's a lot of it. Like practically day to day, every morning I come in 9:30. I come in about 8:45. Catch up on some emails or Slack. 9:30, I do a sync with my executive assistant, so she has my entire day laid out. Yes. She has my entire to-do list. We stack rank my to-dos. We put them on the calendar for the day. Yeah. Every meeting that I walk into is prepared for ahead of time. So I've got notes for that meeting done by my executive assistant or whoever I'm meeting with. And so we have an agenda for every call. I'll show up for those calls. I still close big deals. So I still work on our enterprise deals because I enjoy it. I like to stay sharp. And then occasionally.
Quick aside on the executive assistant thing, because I've done the same thing. I've talked to a lot of agency owners. So obviously that can be a big benefit, right? They're like intertwined, helping you with your
100%
personal life, managing that as well.
Yep.
How do you actually then are you just looking for that person who's just like super committed, or do you have like specific guidelines and structure for them?
You get what you pay for. So my executive assistant makes $95,000 a year. So she's a rock star.
She's good.
She spans my personal and my professional. So I live on a 70-acre ranch. My ranch has needs. I've got contractors, vendors showing up to my farm to take care of grass, fences, yard, house, etc. She coordinates that. She's on speed dial with my wife. My wife needs something. Hey, can you go pick up these groceries? Or we have a private chef that she goes and picks up our meals, so she'll go do that. That's the personal side. Or like even we had our appliance, our stove or our oven went out, and so she's on call with the support, etc. We just had a baby, another baby this year, or last year, and so we've got a bunch of medical bills. So she stack ranks and organizes those medical bills. I pick up my mail every morning from my mailbox. I don't take it in my house. I take it to the office. I give it to her. She sorts it. She goes through it. She knows when bills are due. That's all personal. And then professionally, my whole goal is I want you to own my calendar. I want you to protect it, make sure nothing gets on there that shouldn't. But I want you to own my calendar. You know what my highest and best use is. And so therefore, if things are getting on my calendar that are not my highest and best use, then I want you to take ownership of that and say, hey, Joey, you got this meeting with this guy. Like, this is not going to be worth your time. Why are you doing that? Good question. I think I was just being a nice guy, and I took the meeting. She goes, all right, I'm going to cancel it. I was like, okay. So, have someone who truly knows you and wants to see you be successful is big. And just someone, honestly, it just comes down to a certain type of personality, right? So someone who can take things and run with it, someone who kind of can be an all-seeing eye to some degree, has a pulse on the culture, has a pulse on our office, has a pulse on my personal stuff, etc. And then just having a really good communication. We sync up at the beginning and end of each day. At 9:30 when we meet, we plan the day. At the end of the day, I tell her, hey, I didn't get to 2 of these 7 things. Can you find another place for us to put that on the calendar for me to get back to that? So I've had a bunch of assistants over the years. I mean, I've had incredible virtual assistants in the Philippines. My first virtual assistant, Nick, he's been with me for 4 years now, or 3.5 years, and he's still in the company. He runs our international operations now, but he was great. And a lot of it comes down to just, there's a term called definition of done. That I suggest any sort of delegation you do, there needs to be a true definition of done. Okay, so what needs to be done? What is the final product I'm looking for in this task or this delegated project? What are things that you are going to need to be successful? What is the deadline that I expect this to be done by? Can you repeat that back to me? Great. We're clear. I don't have to think about it again until it's done.
Yeah, I think the virtual assistant thing is big. Like, you can convert them to regular hires too. Like, especially even those Filipinos that you have with you for like 5-6 years. So I think that's a great kind of tip there. I guess sort of wrapping things up and just like tying things together. Is your biggest sort of advice for entrepreneurs out there, people who want to be entrepreneurs, is to just put yourself out there and like not be afraid and hustle with the sales? Or do you have some other type of message or like a few takeaway from like a challenge that you faced, I guess?
I probably have a couple. Couple key takeaways. Yeah. So the first is just do it, right? So you're not gonna know until you just do it. That's an easy one. The second is no one else is responsible for you and no one is coming to help you. And so therefore have that mindset. Third is revenue cures all sins, not actual sins, obviously, but business sins, if you will.
Sure.
And so side on the side of finding revenue, especially in the early days when you're sub 10 million in revenue, it's important to really continue to press in on revenue generation over all things, right? Operations. Amazing sales can cure bad operations. Amazing operations cannot cure poor sales.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's like a factor of 10.
Yes.
The sales and operations.
Fourth thing would be just ship it, meaning your product does not need to be perfect. It will not be perfect. You cannot have it be perfect until you actually get it into the market and get actual feedback. Too many people build things and then try to find people to buy them. Find the people, sell the thing, build it, iterate once you give it to them. Those are a lot of the big ones. I would also say, like, don't skimp on talent, right? Don't just find someone because they're the cheapest hire that you can make. Find someone because they're the best hire to make. I'd rather have one person, one executive assistant I pay $95,000 to, than have a VA that I have to fire every 3 or 4 months that I paid $40,000 for, right? Because it's not worth the time. There's a way bigger opportunity cost if you fail at that.
Yeah.
So those are a lot of my tips that I would probably give someone if I was starting off.
What are some lethal mistakes?
Being a Me Too organization where you try to, not Me Too from like the political side of things. I mean, Me Too meaning don't try to emulate and sound like anybody else. One of the best advice I ever got. It's actually from a book. It's right here. It's called The Challenger Customer. Super good book.
But one thing.
Yeah, same author. Better book.
Okay.
One thing that he says is, when you think about how do you stand out, you have to ask yourself, if you were to take your company name and all your branding and all the people, their names, out of the equation, and you were to basically bullet point out what you do for customers and how you do it, and you're just labeled company A, there's a company B, a company C, would your current clients or future clients be able to pick you out from an anonymous lineup in a heartbeat? If they can't, then you are not special and you will have a difficult time selling. And so when you think about creating a value proposition for the company and what makes you unique, what is that thing that if a client were to look at an anonymous version or a redacted version of your company with no branding or nothing, they would know within an instant that's Apex revenue.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
The lethal mistake is blending in and trying to copy everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think probably a lot of other problems like the bad hires or whatever, the right sales.
Yeah, those are obvious. The bad hires, not focusing on sales.
Yeah.
Overemphasizing operations before you really dial in pipeline and sales.
Cool. And I guess last question here, and then we'll wrap it up. But personal advice for you've been an entrepreneur for 7 years. Like, what kind of personal advice do you have for entrepreneurs? You mentioned the managing the home life and stuff with the assistant, which I think is also an interesting thing because it enables you to put in the maximum time. But like, do you have any other type of advice there?
I'll go philosophical. Everything in this earth, everything we look at, the table we're sitting at, the computers we have, the phones in our hand or our pocket, all required action to be created. But what created action? What precedes action? Thought. I had to think of the idea to then do the action. But what influences your thoughts, which influence your actions? And that is the ticket. And we call that being. Who you are, your identity, what you believe about yourself is your being. Your being informs your thoughts informs your actions. And so if your actions are busted, you don't like where you're at in life, it's probably because you have poor thoughts. Well, why do you have poor thoughts? It's because you probably have a poor or wrecked or weak being or identity. And I have a little bit of from a spiritual perspective, I think that your being is informed by who or what you are plugged into. So call it consciousness, call it the universe, call it God. What you are plugged into will inform your being will inform your thoughts will inform your actions. And then when you have actions that produce the results you want, that then reinforms your being, right? It affirms your being of who you are, which then makes your thoughts better, which then makes your actions better. And your actions give you feedback back to your being that says you're on the right track, and you continue this cycle. And so do the hard work of identifying, who am I? But the hard work, this is I'm gonna get too philosophical here. The hard work requires you to go to the dark place first. What is my identity? Who am I currently that is not where I want to be? Right? And you have to be radically authentic about your inauthenticities. You have to identify, where am I falling short? And that sometimes requires you to go to a dark place of understanding yourself. I am insufficient. I am weak. I am an asshole of a husband. I am not a good father. Whatever your dark place might be, identify those things, forgive yourself for being those things, and then declare who you're going to be moving forward.
Interesting.
That
Joey,
would be my best personal advice. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's
thanks
profound.
For having me, man.
Where how do people work with you guys, and what size companies can reach out?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to work with companies who are doing 10 million or more in revenue, between 10 million and 10 billion, really. But our threshold's 10 million because our minimum ticket's 180 grand just to start. So Apex revenue, if that fits you. If not, then just, I would say personally, go to LinkedIn, follow me there. And I say some controversial things at times, and I'm there for your entertainment.
Sweet. This is the one podcast.